This is Steve Harris from Iron Maiden and British Lion. You're listening to Andrew McCaskey from Scars and Guitars.
G'day everybody. The conversations with the cavalcade of legends continue because this episode features John Gallagher, the bassist and vocalist in long-running British outfit Raven. It's truly a joy to talk to John. I've been a fan of his for many years, as much for his musicality as much as the way he conducts himself. He's a very honest fella and he's also very upbeat. And you'll hear that through the chat. Now, the catalyst for the conversation is due to Raven's Australian tour. I'll put all relevant information in the episode description. Do note, though, that I got word through today, that being Friday the 1st of November 2024, that the Brisbane show unfortunately has been cancelled, which is a real bummer because I was looking forward to catching up with John at the show. To the matter at hand, throughout the conversation, John shares his thoughts on the Australian tour, the band's enduring legacy, some overlooked albums and reflections. He reflects on former members and discusses what it's like working with his brother, guitarist Mark. He also discusses his experiences early on with the Osbournes, that being Sharon, Don, and Ozzy. Well, not Don, that's Don Arden, but Sharon Osbourne and Ozzy Osbourne, Metallica, and his perspective. We have an in-depth conversation about the growing wave of authoritarianism across the Western world. So yes, this is one of those episodes as well where we talk about very relevant topics that may not be related to music, but there they are. Okay, let's do it. Here he is, the legend, John Gallagher from Raven.
Hey, Andrew, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, mate. Really looking forward to our chat. I can tell you that we had a conversation many years ago, but mate, a few years have passed, as I've said, so it's always good to look forward to someone of your stature and standing and experience to have a chat with.
Thank you, sir. Looking forward to it.
How have the calls been going? Are we interesting to talk to here in the Australian media?
Yeah, I've been slogging it out. I had 4 Zoom calls yesterday, and I've had 5 so far today. So it's been I had a half-hour break there, which was good because I had to check in everybody's flights. So at least I've got that taken care of, thank God.
Oh, great. Yeah. Just a bit of a backstory. I was supposed to be talking to Necro Butcher from Mayhem for the past half hour, but he was a no-show. So I had Necro Butcher and then you, but Necro Butcher didn't turn up. So either way.
You was waiting on the supply of the sheep and the cows, I believe, probably.
Yeah, I think so. Well, it is midnight his time. I suppose it must be close to that where you are, is it?
It's 7:31 p.m.
Okay, it's not too bad.
I'm in Florida, so where they are, I guess they're in Sweden or Norway or some damn place. Yeah, he's probably like 1 o'clock in the morning, 1:30.
You live you actually live and reside in Florida?
I'm in Florida about half the year. The rest of the time, I'm at my girlfriend's out in Newcastle upon Tyne, back home in England.
Oh, right. So you must hang out with Nico then, do you? Nico McBrain, do you?
He's down the road. I've never actually been. My brother's been there and said it was surprisingly small but really good food. So we got to check it out at some point. Nico's such a character. Great player too.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, God bless him. I just saw mate in a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know how he does it. I'm not suggesting that he's too old to do it, but I'm simply saying that we all lead very long lives, and that's a very physical activity that he does.
Oh yeah, that's full on. There's I don't know how these guys do it. It's so physical. Playing metal music at that level, it's so physical. It's crazy.
Yeah. This Australian tour, how many times have you been down here now?
This will be our second. We've only been down once. We were down in 2019. And I think we played about maybe 6 shows then. That was with Girls' School and Tank.
That's right.
Yes. Old mates. It was like the high school trip.
How were the hangovers from that one? I bet they were brutal on some of them.
None from me, but plenty from them. Those boys from Tank like to drink, and the girls going to put in a few innings as well. That's for sure.
It sounds like you're a bit like me. You haven't drunk in a while.
I never drank, never did. That's how I have my golden throat, darling. No, I left it to everybody else. My brother drank more than enough to make up for me, so that worked out fine.
Was that a personal choice or just something you were never drawn to?
I was never drawn to it. Personal choice too. It was just like, I can appreciate what a good beer tastes like, but do I want to drink 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of them? No, I wouldn't want to drink 8 pints of anything. And, inevitably there'd be people that just wanted to get drunk and cause trouble. And that was like, no, I can have a lot of fun with being drunk, that's for sure. And as time has gone by, I'm very happy I made that decision because I've seen people totally destroyed from it. So, and, one of them we just lost last week, wasn't it? Paul Diano, for God's sake.
Yep.
Yeah, that kind of path is not somewhere where you want to be.
Did you know Paul very well?
Well enough to have him put his hand in my pocket in 1980 and steal all of our money. So we had to beg and borrow for gas money to get home. Kind of guy he was back then. And then I had the opportunity to play bass for him in 91, I believe it was. His manager was a good friend of mine, said, Paul's doing showcases, trying to get a new deal. Would you play bass? It'd be like for 2 weeks. I said, sure.
Yeah.
Give me a lot of money. So I got my money back in spades, never said anything about it. And Paul was a sweetheart. He behaved himself. He was professional. He sung great. He worked hard. And there was me, there was Steve Hopgood and Cliff Evans who were playing in Tank, a guy called Ray DeTone from Jersey who's a great guitar player, myself and Paul. And what was funny was he was trying to get a deal and he was doing it under the table because they were playing Iron Maiden songs and Battlezone songs and not telling anybody that they were old songs. Mm-hmm. And these idiot record company A&R guys didn't know any better. They thought it was all new stuff. They're stupid. So he got a deal with a South American company. And at the end of it, they're like, they want to do a live record. Fake live record. So they got a remote truck in and we recorded live to 2-track and did all the songs we were playing. And they added an audience afterwards. But the album is actually the band playing completely live. It's called South American Assault. And it's really cool. It's got a bunch of Iron Maiden and Battlezone songs on it. And I can look at myself and say, hey, I recorded Smoke on the Water and it ended up on a record. God knows why they did that, but there you go. But so I worked with Paul and Paul was great. And it was very sad to see his decline over the years. But kind of guy he was, they have the expression Jack the Lad.
Yeah.
Where he was like, the life and soul of the party and everyone's friend. But there was a darker side to that,
Yeah, we've seen that, and I've certainly heard the stories. Yeah, he's more or less the archetype of burning the candle.
His own demise, yeah, sure.
Yeah, he burnt the candle at both ends and didn't know when to stop. I don't know whether this is true or not, but at one point I'm just talking here, okay? I'm not causing rumor, bullshit, or what have you. But at one point, he even converted to Islam to try to contain his addictions, because he
really,
at one point. I mean, I don't know how true that is or not. You read these things on forums and boards, and I remember that specific one from way back in the day. With the internet forums, the boards before Blabbermouth and all that sort of thing kicked in, and I think he fucking had.
It doesn't sound that outrageous. I mean, quite often. People, they have their come to God moment. It's the only way they can get out of it, AA and all that. There's a strong religious component of that. And it's like whatever gets you through the night, whatever gets you through to the next day. I thank God I've never got involved in anything like that. So, no, I never drank, never did any of the funny stuff. And like I say, I'm lucky. I've still got all the voice I had when I started, and maybe a little bit more at this point. So that's good.
Yeah, no, you're keeping on top of it. Plus, there's no stories out there about you, for better or for worse. There's no war stories out there about you causing out.
See that blackmail money I paid out worked well. That's good.
So with the Australian tour, will you be focusing on an era or an album?
No, it's going to be the whole thing because it's our 50th anniversary. It's 50 years of the band, which is still hard to get my brain around. But like a friend came up to me and sent me a link. Here's, the top 15 bands, whatever, longevity, how long they've been together. And we were in the top 10. It's crazy to think of. Because, the Stones, Aerosmith, ZZ Top, ridiculous that would anywhere near that. But there we were. And so that's, it's an achievement. It really is. We've been up against it many, many times and fought our way through. Had our ups and downs, but came through unscathed pretty much. Here we are. And just enjoying the hell out of it. We know how lucky we are to be doing what we do at the level we're doing it, because we're doing it well. We're playing better than we ever have, and just enjoying it big time.
What about your relationship with your brother over the years? Has it been testing at times?
Very rarely. I mean, we're different people, but we used to fight like cats and dogs when we were kids. And once we started playing music, I think we just started to take it out on the guitars instead. Instead of beating each other up, we'd beat the equipment up. We'll have discussions, as it were, but we're pretty much of the same mind of, as regards music and the band. We're very focused and have the same goals and the same aspirations, as they would say.
Yeah. So there's been the two of you, but you've had you've had drummers for long periods of time. It's got to be said. So from Rob Hunter to Joe Hasselvander to Mike Heller, when you look back over those three in particular, do you separate the band into those eras? Given you and your brother have been the mainstays.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like 33% of what's going on changed. So, each guy brought something slightly different to the table. Rob was a great songwriter, played guitar. It's difficult to tell on those early three albums who came up with what, as far as, guitar ideas. It's like, a lot of them were Rob's, a lot of them were mine, a lot of them were Mark's, and quite often intermingled, his part, my part, his part, whatever, we'd do that. And then when Joe came in, Joe was a more powerhouse drummer, but I mean, he had technique. When he was a kid, he played in a Mahavishnu Orchestra tribute band, which was rather challenging. So Joe had chops up the wazoo too, and a great guitar player, and so he came up with an awful lot of ideas too. And now we've got Mike, who's in a sense a combination between the two, but his technique is frightening. He's staggeringly good. I'd put him up there against anyone. He's like Vinnie Collier playing metal. He's really out there, and it's great because it kicks us way up the ass, and we love it. It just makes us up our game. And he's starting to learn guitar. In fact, he came up with riffs for one of the songs on the last album. So that's always great to have, The more ideas, the better.
Hey, which Raven album do you think is most underrated, and why do you think it needs more recognition or deserves more recognition?
Oh, that's a tough one. There's a couple of them. Personally, maybe Everything Louder.
Mhm.
It was literally recorded on a shoestring budget and done over like 4 weekends. You know, I was working at the time, and I'd drive down to Virginia on a weekend. We'd do like 3 days and then come back and then boom, boom, boom. But the songs are great on that record, and I'd love to give it a remix at some point. It'd be cool.
What are your thoughts on the 1990s now that we're 3 decades past it? But were those challenging? Obviously they were challenging, but how challenging were they?
They were challenging, for sure. It was, to a degree, it was difficult to get arrested.
Mhm.
Hang on, can you hang on 1 second? I just
Sure.
got to tell this guy I'm doing something.
Yeah.
Policeman has been.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. No
Where
worries.
were we?
I'm just talking about the 1990s because you're right.
Oh yeah, being
Yeah.
challenging.
Yeah.
It was tough because the tail end of the 80s, we were dealing with coming off the Atlantic deal, which we'd done one commercial and taken one commercial album, The Pack Is Back, which kind of soured us to a lot of people. We had to fight our way back from that. Robert quit the band. We got Joe in. And music had changed on a dime. It was thrash metal or it was glam rock.
Yes.
And we were neither. We were, stuck in the middle there. And within a relatively short period of time, that all got washed away and it was all grunge. And then even, I liked the grunge. I liked the bands. But then it was new metal, which was, oh, Jesus. And it just seemed to go from bad to worse.
Yeah.
So in the early 90s, we just concentrated on, we ended up in 89 doing a tour with Creator, which, we jumped on because we hadn't been playing in Europe for like 5 years. Atlantic would never give us the money to do it. They were totally uninterested in that. So we went over, did that, and we ended up working with Creators Management for a few years. So we did Architect of Fear and Heads Up in Germany, and we toured Europe and did well in Europe until the plague of the new metal, grunge or whatever started to hit there. And then we had the opportunity to go tour Japan. And we went and did that and did an album, Glow, did the live records, Destroy All Monsters.
Yeah.
And things started to pick up again back in Europe. And in 97, we toured with Hammerfall. That was their first tour. We had them on with us, and Tank. So it was a great bill, great tour. And we had that, and then we started writing and getting things together. And then Mark had his accident in 2001, and that kind of put us on the shelf for about 3 or 4 years.
Forgive me, what happened with Mark?
He had a building fall on him.
Oh, Jesus. Okay.
His feet got disconnected. One of his calves got disconnected. He had a piece of metal rebar go through the other one. So his legs were crushed. And he nearly didn't pull through it. And then the doctors were, we're going to have to cut your legs off. And he's like, no. And then say, well, we're going to have to cut your right leg off. No. You'll never walk again. Watch me. And it was inspirational. Watch him literally crawl his way back from that. In 2004, we did a handful of dates with him in a wheelchair, which was strange, even though he played fantastic. It was like, this might be the way it's going to be. And then 2005, he was doing better, and he was wearing a leg brace. And then we did a few festivals. We did one in Tampa with Testament and Body Count, I believe. And then we did a couple in Europe. We did Keep It True, and we did Bloodstock. And, you could see him getting stronger, getting better.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, we started, okay, let's try and get our act together and do a new album. And we basically had the Walk Through Fire album, which was planting the flag, like, okay, here's day one. Boom, let's go from here. So that was kind of the beginning of our third act, as it were.
Yeah, I hear you've been very busy since then. That's for sure. Given the amount of albums and tours and the like that you've done, but you have been around. You have that legacy. So you go way back to the Ozzy Osbourne solo era. When Bob was in the band, and also Maiden and all these other great new wave of British heavy metal bands, Satan and stuff. You're part of that ilk. So when we talk about legacy, you're ongoing. But which newer bands do you feel carry the torch of your high energy approach to playing and writing?
Well, there's a few younger bands, a couple of Scandinavian ones. I think Wolf is one of them. I can't remember the name of the other one. There's also our mates Night Demon. Yep. They're definitely taking a lot from that era and putting a little bit of their own thing into it. And that's always a healthy approach. I mean, out of the metal thing, like I love Rival Sons. I think they're a fantastic band, and they take a lot from the 60s and the 70s and kind of mold it through their process and come out with something slightly different, which is, reinvention is cool. Why not? It's obviously very difficult to have any kind of originality these days. And it's proven daily. People go, oh, check this band out. And it's like, I've heard this literally 1,000 times before. And no matter how technically wonderful the players may be, at the end of the day, if you're not saying anything and you're not saying anything slightly different, it gets old. So I despair of that a little bit, It's always cool if we're out on a festival or we're playing and there's a local band who's actually good. That blows us away, and we love that. That's always, but it doesn't always happen. Often it's just like, hey, I've been locked in a closet since 1985 listening to Slayer. Look what I came up with. It's like, yeah, you sound like a bad Slayer. Listen to something else. Broaden your mind. Try and bring something else into it. Have you ever heard the words Joni Mitchell? Well, why don't you listen to that for 5 minutes? You might come up with something different, Yeah.
No, you're not wrong. Yeah. So just on that note, are there any musical territories or collaborations that you're eager to explore in the future, either within Raven or something else?
Well, as far as the band's concerned, we're pushing this vision we have, which we really, since Extermination, we've just, harder, faster, louder, more. And within those boundaries, we will push. And there's a lot of exciting newish stuff on the last record and the stuff we're working on now. I'm very excited about that. As far as outside the band, I've done various projects. Me and Mike were actually both on a thing called Helm's Deep that came out like last year, which is, I don't know, it kind of sounds like Iron Maiden on crack and acid at the same time. Wow. And I'm in the finishing period, even though my laptop blew up last week, of finishing tracks for the second Helm's Deep album, which is very challenging. And Alex is out of his mind. It's like, oh yeah, this song is in E flat at 432 hertz, and this song is in E, but it's at 428 hertz. It's like, it hurts all right. I'll freaking punch you if you keep doing this. Crazy. But it's anything new like that is fun. There was a character a few years ago from New Zealand, did a couple of books on Budgie, and he wrote a song, and he got me and this guy Jan Stark from Overdrive in Sweden and wanted us to play his song. And I had all of a sudden a little bit of personal input coming in. So is it possible we can cut this 7-minute thing down to about 3:30 and take off this useless information out of it? And the guy was like, sure, try. And we came up with a cool song to go with his book about Tony Borge, and it was a great challenge. It was a lot of fun, And also Jan had a couple of Budgie tribute albums. I got to play on them, play some bass on a few. So it's always fun to collaborate and do stuff a little out of the ordinary,
Hey,
I've always done that over the years. I've done, maybe late 80s, early 90s, did a blues album. There was a guy from Brooklyn, Bob Fortunato, great slide player. And he basically cobbled together a band of heavy metal guys. It was me, it was Sid Falk that used to play drums in Overkill.
Okay.
Doug McDonald, who used to play in Bible Black and early days, I think, Manowar. That was great. That was fun too.
Hey, here's a bit of a different question for you, and I've been wanting to ask someone that's been around, that's been doing this for decades. So someone who knows about this sort of stuff.
An old bastard, in other words. Yes.
I talk a lot of politics and social issues on the show because I think it's important to leave everything on the table. Is my perspective. So you're a musician, but you're still a human being. Is my point, and you're a citizen of that world and citizen of the Western Hemisphere. This sort of thing. So the question in and amongst that isn't a question about social or political issues, but is your view that it's better not to talk about those sorts of things because it helps preserve your career and not alienate anybody? Or do you take the view that, look, I'm still a human and I'm allowed to have an opinion?
Well, I'm certainly allowed to have an opinion, but just because I'm in a band and I've got, my head's a little higher doesn't give me the right, or that I shouldn't be pontificating, as it were. Because, it's the old story of opinions are like assholes. Everyone's got one and they all stink, So I try to shy away from that. It seems silly to probably alienate 50% of your audience at least, because the way things are so divided these days. So if someone comes out and asks me a question, I'll give them my opinion, but I'm not going to fly it on a flag. It's like, who cares? My opinion doesn't mean that much. It means to me, but
Yeah, I hear. Hey, just talking about there's a video out there of Metallica introducing you guys at the John Zazula tribute, I think it was.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Are you in touch with James and Lars at all?
No, not really. It's anytime we contact them, it's usually through an intermediary. It's very, they're living in that rarefied air. But before we did that, we went up to about 3 months before that. We went up to Metallica HQ and had a wonderful day up there, and sat and talked to James for a couple of hours, just about that Kill 'Em All for One tour.
Yeah.
And just wanted to get it all down on tape, and it was really cool. But what was great is just seeing that the way they are with they're so successful, they got all the money, blah 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 blah, but they're just fans, just like all we are. They're fans. We walked in, but they're fans with deep pockets. So we walked in this room. They have 2 rooms. One is the room you usually see them playing in, and the other room is basically, it has isolation cabinets for recording, and it's a storeroom. And we thought, we'll set up in here and we'll put a table here. But the first thing we see is a flight case with Burke Shelley Budgie written on it. And then next to it is the 200-watt Marshall Major amp and a couple of the Vox 18-inch cabinets that Burke used to play through. And those are the cabinets and the amp that we saw him play through in 1975 when we were kids, seeing him at Newcastle City Hall. Mm. And then when we got the little show through to the studio, the producer, Greg, was there, and we told him about the cabinet. He says, yeah, have you seen this? And there's Burke's bass, his Fender Precision on the wall. He says, have you ever played that? I goes, yes, I have. We played with Budgie, and Burke was wonderful. He says, that's the best sounding Fender Precision I've ever worked with, and it has all that history. It's all over the new album. So that's what's cool. That Burke Shelley bass is all on that 72 Seasons album. How cool is that? And then when James came in, he says, what's this? He says, well, it had to go to a good home. You know, Burke had died. His wife was selling the gear, and he had the money, so he bought it. He says, but come and look at this. We go in the next room, and up on the wall is the Thin Lizzy sign, the mirrored sign with the lights all the way around it. Up on the wall, pride of place. Wow. Says when Phil died, it all got thrown in the garbage. And a roadie said no, took it out, kept it in his house for like 20 odd years, and then finally sold it. And James said, I'd snap that up. So collectors with deep pockets, but that's great, you know.
I don't think anybody knows that about them. Probably some Uber fans will, but that's really refreshing to hear, because I'm sure you're aware that there's a lot of old fans like me that checked out of Metallica years ago, but to hear that they understand the value in preserving actual history, artifacts of significance is really, really heartening. So you see,
I mean, yeah, I think it's a lot of sour grapes and a lot of people, you know, wanting, you know, it's just like, yeah, Metallica sold out after they did that second demo and all that rubbish. It's just like, you know, you can like it or not like it, but what you have to understand is that, you know, they forge their own path. They, for better or worse, they do what they want to do. They don't have to do what anyone else has told them, and they go ahead and do it, and they do it their own way. And they do love what they do, and they do love music. And, you know, so in that way, they're fantastic ambassadors for the music. And it's bands like them and Iron Maiden who are, you know, it's that old saying about a rising tide lifts all boats.
Yeah.
So when Iron Maiden are doing well and Metallica's out there doing well, it's really good for metal music. It really is, you know. The effects of that spread it's like ripples. It spreads very wide across that pond.
Do you know Steve Harris very well?
I've only met Steve a couple of times. When we played with him 1980, taught him for 10 minutes and met him on one of the cruises. He had the British Lion on one of the cruises and just said hi at breakfast. He seems like a quiet guy. And met Bruce a couple of times. He's quite the character, pretty hilarious. I got a good Iron Maiden story. When we played with him in 1980, we were there for the sound check, and Steve wasn't there, and Paul Diano wasn't there, but it was Dennis Stratton, Dave Murray, and Clive, the drummer, Clive Burr. And they got up on stage and played a note-perfect version of One of These Nights by the Eagles.
Wow, okay.
And we looked at each other and go, so this is the future of British metal? As soon as Steve walked in, that stopped immediately, very quickly.
I know how to play that song, actually. It's a great tune, that one. Yeah, it's a killer song. Yeah.
Oh, we loved the Eagles. You know why? Because when we were playing the clubs in Newcastle, every other band wanted to be the Eagles. We were the hooligans. We were the absolute hooligans that stuck out like a sore thumb. Everyone else was playing all the, you know, they're going like the,
yeah.
All that shite. It was like, hate it.
I think if I'm not mistaken, Venom are from Newcastle as well. So did you guys have a lot to do with each other?
Well, Conrad was the tape op during the first two albums at Impulse Studios, Neat Records. So yeah, we'd heard him literally for a couple of years talking about how he had the dirtiest band in the world, and they were going to do a demo and do a record and all this other stuff. And he came in with this destroyed EB3 bass that it turned out he got from our producer, Steve Thompson. But he was like, yeah, this bass used to belong to Andy Fraser from Free. And we're looking at each other going, yeah, sure, of course it did. Mm-hmm. Okay. So he had quite a lot of tall tales, but obviously bags of enthusiasm. And, they took a slightly different path where they created that god-awful noise and really didn't want to play live at all. And they did the mimed thing at the People's Theatre down in Jesmond, Witching Hour and whatever else. Just when you see all the dry ice and all that, that was all the mimed thing. Yeah. And that was it for years until I think they were supposed to go to the States and the band had fell apart and they got two different guitar players in, and then it just, ended up going haywire, as it were. But hugely influential, absolutely. Again, and another set of guys creating a completely different path, More power to them. But yeah. I'm friends with Jeff and Tony Dolan, and I got, we ran into Conrad at a festival about 7 or 8 years ago. I've got nothing bad to say about those guys at all. They're great.
You've clearly got all the relationships intact and certainly all of the stories. And I did a bit of research before getting onto the call, but I'm not aware that you've got a book out there or you've had anybody really approach you in terms of like there's not a lot out there where you're telling your story. So have you got designs for a book, like a biography?
I got approached by the people who were promoting our last Japanese shows, and they were like, oh, we're doing this thing online where there's like war stories. Could you give us, like a long form? Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, I could do that. So I ended up doing about 4 or 5 of them. And when you look at them, they're like chapters of a book. And I'm just like, I thought I could do it, but after doing that, I said, yeah, I definitely could do it. And most of these books have the same kind of story arc. They'll have an opening, which is like somewhere in the middle of the story. And then you'll go at the beginning and you have the whole behind the music, doing better, fall off the cliff, come back up again, Yeah. And I put it off because I didn't think we'd climbed far enough back up again. So maybe we'll get round to doing that. I'm in quite a few books when a lot of the new wave of British heavy metal things. I'm in quite a few of those. There's a recent book about the northeast of England, about the music thing, and I just was sent a copy of that. There's a really good interview with me in there. It's called Too Far North, the book, and it has some really unsung people in there, which is really interesting, the stories, It's cool.
Yeah, being from that far north, almost in Scotland as you are, did you feel like as though there was any antagonism between you and the musicians that were milling about in London?
No, not with the musicians. Back then, because it was a different world, pre-internet. Once the internet came out, people would look at videos of audiences and go, oh, this is how you enjoy yourself. Back in the day, the slam dancing and stage diving was exclusively California. You didn't see that in a metal show anywhere else, only California. And then it spread, till it's all over. But back in the day, we had great audiences in Newcastle. They were harsh, but they were fair. You'd see an opening band at the City Hall, and if they were good, the audience would give them a shot and get behind them. And if they were bad, they'd tear them to pieces. As you got further south, the audiences were more reserved. And when you played in London, like we played in London the first time with Ozzy Osbourne, and it was just a bunch of this, oh, he's playing that F diminished chord. I wouldn't have played it like that. I would have, you know.
Yeah.
The old joke about how many guitarists does it take to change a light bulb?
Yes.
It's like 8. 1 to do the light bulb and the other 7 to go, that's all right, but I could have done it better than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was very much that. And then the next time we played, it was so different. We played with Girls' School. It was fantastic. It was great. And that gradually changed to the point where there's no difference. It's, you know, people are, you know, that if they go out, they're going out for a good time. They're going out to enjoy themselves. That being said, you know, the South American audiences are insane. They're out of their minds.
Yeah.
We played Sao Paulo, Brazil. These guys were singing guitar riffs.
Yeah.
And at any point they could sing along. They'd, you know, whoa, 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 right from the get-go with On and On, stuff like that. And singing their own songs in between. This football chant, oh, way, oh, way, oh, way, oh, 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 whatever the hell it is. That and another one. Just crazy. And, you know, the Japanese as a society are so reserved and quiet, but the audiences are mental. They're absolutely crackers. So,
yeah.
and then you've got the generational thing now. Quite often at the shows, you've got 3 generations of people. You've got the original fans, their kids, and their kids, which is fantastic, you know.
Was it ever even... Could you conceive or perceive, I should say, sorry, could you perceive that you'd be here decades later when you started out in the late 70s?
No, nobody thinks that far ahead like that. It's you know, absolutely crazy. I mean, I get the same question often about Metallica as well. It's like, could you see that Metallica were going to be the it's like, no, not a chance. Not in a million years. But, you know, things work in mysterious ways. And the amount of time we've been out, there's been so many bands that have came up and fallen and disappeared. And we're still here. We're still doing it. And we're very, very humble and very, very happy that we are still doing it. And we enjoy it. Probably more now than we ever have because we appreciate it more. And we know that there's a lot of people would, you know, literally cut their left arm off to be able to do half of what we're doing. So it's a blessing and it's a responsibility, you know. We're out there. We got to do it. We got to do it right. And we enjoy that challenge.
So when you look back, and I'm not talking just about the new wave of British heavy metal thing, which is probably the most singularly important movement in heavy metal, given what it spawned, i.e. Metallica and you guys and Maiden and all these great bands came out of it. But what do you think, so the question is, I'll pose the question is, what is the most significant contribution to metal from your perspective that Raven has given?
I think we took a whole bunch of threads from here, there, and everywhere, and wove something different. We were one of the bands that took a lot of influences from stuff that had went before, and just kind of cut the fat out and revved it up, and started playing, you know, with maybe a more technical bent, but you know, the sound of this band is the faceted in that it's like, you like say the technical, and then there's the noise crazy, and there's the structure and the chaos, and it's you know, very much a yin and yang type of thing going on. But we, you know, you look back there, yeah, we're listening to Judas Priest, but yeah, we were listening to the Mahavishnu Orchestra and Genesis and Yes and ELP. And, you know, Tears for Fears and whatever that was out and about. We were like sponges. We'd take a little bit from everything and craft something a little different. So, We had a lot of heavy metal. We had a lot of rock and roll in what we do. And we make ourselves laugh. This is because you could take almost any one of our songs and treat it like big band. Like big band from the 40s.
Yeah.
You did it with that, it would work perfectly. And it's hilarious, but it's true.
Yeah. Copy, yeah. And what do you hope? I'll make this my last question for you then. So looking ahead, nobody's got a crystal ball, I understand that, but what do you hope happens for you and the band?
We've got a lot of music in us still, and it surprises me. I'm leaping forward, bound by bound, getting a better player. We're playing better as a band. We're challenging ourselves. It's just a great ride. We've got a bucket list of places we still want to play.
Yeah.
We want to play Bangkok. We want to play New Zealand. We want to play India. And even in the States, I mean, you could tour 10 years in the States and not visit the same place twice. It's ridiculous. You've got your A cities, you've got your B cities, you've got your C cities. It goes on forever. And there's still places we've never been to. So we've got that. We want to tour more with other bands. We want to do some opening slots. We want to reach new audiences. Not that we're unhappy with the audiences we have, but I just think we enjoy the challenge of getting up there and people going, who the hell's this? And winning them over and trying to do what Alex Harvey did for us back in 1973, reach out and grab you, Yeah.
Yeah, I hear. Actually, this is my last question for you then. I meant to ask you this one earlier. You're one of the few people that's dealt with Sharon, and I know it wasn't, you weren't completely entwined with her, but you got out of it scot-free. What's your perception of Sharon Osbourne?
There's a multifaceted one. Everyone says she's a nightmare. We met her. It was hilarious how different she used to look back then. But
yeah,
they came up to us. We'd done like 3 shows, and the 4th show was the Hammersmith Odeon in London. And we'd done the sound check, and she pulls me over and sits me down at a table with her and Ozzy. And she goes, John, Ozzy wants a hand in your future. And I was like gobsmacked. Because again, this is the Ozzy and Sharon of then, not the Ozzy and Sharon of 3 or 4 years later, right? But still. And literally, the words were out of her mouth, and the door burst open into the hall behind her, and this character in the white suit with a white hat, where the fuck's my daughter? Fuck that, mouth like a sewer. And that was Don Arden. That was her father.
Yeah.
Came over, started fighting with them, and I just kind of got up and moved away. And that was the end of that. And funnily enough, right at that time, Electric Light Orchestra disappeared.
Yeah.
Gary Moore was tied up with them. He disappeared. And there was a whole thing with Jet Records and business. And of course, Ozzy and Sharon extricated themselves out of that. That was that whole, a little later on, the whole Speak of the Devil, or Talk of the Devil, whatever it was called, the live album, to get off the deal with them. So a lot of stuff went down there. But like you say, I think we dodged a bullet because Sharon's managed Ozzy very well and managed a lot of other people, and I don't think it ever worked out with anybody else,
No, you're not wrong. She's been, there's no doubt she's a force of nature, but the impact that she's had on musicians and on bands and just the industry. I'm even going to go further here and say the impact that she's had on the industry has been tremendous. Now, I use the word,
and not always in a good way. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Obviously she's got she's number one for her husband. And, that's commendable and wonderful. But it's kind of a case of the apple falling not too far from the tree, because between Don Arden and his brother, his brother famously held Jeff Lynne of Electric Light Orchestra out of a window.
Yeah.
Threatening to let him go if he didn't come back in and sign the contract. These are the apocryphal stories you hear, things like that. And she admits in her book that they would sign bands just to get money, spec money to do a deal.
Yeah.
Take half the money, record it, and then put it on a shelf and just like, haha, next.
Yeah.
The poor naive guys in the band are like, when we getting signed? Oh, yeah, don't worry about that. And, purely mercenary.
Doesn't seem to have a conscience for anybody outside of blood relations or her own family.
No, it doesn't appear that. And obviously we've all heard the stories from Bob and from Lee, who are, wonderful, wonderful people and incredibly creative people too. And to be marginalized like that, not even just financially, but like creatively marginalized, it's not right. Nobody can doubt the contributions they made to those 2 Aussie albums.
Yeah.
And Bob's been in so many bands and played I've seen Bob in Widowmaker, I saw Bob in Rainbow and in Aussie and in Uri. It's fantastic, best of the best,
I couldn't believe she took on, maybe that's not the right way to frame it, but when the 2005 Ozfest thing where she was throwing eggs at, or she got kids or whatever it was to throw shit at Iron Maiden and turn them off, I couldn't believe she tried to cross Rod Smallwood, though. If there's one person who could take her on, it would be him, surely.
Yeah, that whole thing was, I don't know the full story, but I'd heard that Bruce was bad-mouthing them and finally they got fed up with it. I don't know what caused Bruce to be bad-mouthing them, but they must have been doing something. Sad, unprofessional the whole way through. It should never have escalated into that at all. Great for the tabloids. It's about it. Didn't do anybody else any good, I think.
Well, last time I saw Ozzy, he played in the same venue. It was 2008, so it's many years ago now. He played in the same venue that Iron Maiden just played, but the venue literally had a curtain down half of it. So we had half the audience to what Iron Maiden get, and that sold out. That's a 10,000, 12,000 seat arena in Brisbane. And I don't even think Ozzy could do that these days unless he came out and did some bullshit Black Sabbath show.
Yeah, and again, sometimes those things are it's beyond the band. Right now, since we've run into it a few times since COVID, so many bands went out on tour. They were all cooped up and they all wanted to go on tour. And then it's like, oh, we're on tour, but our lead singer got COVID, so we've had to cancel. And famously, this was Ozzy and Judas Priest in the UK. I think they cancelled like 3 times in a row. And people, I think, are still waiting to get refunded their money. So once this happens a few times to a fan who buys tickets and doesn't get refunded, they're like, well, screw this. I'll go when I know the show's on.
Mm.
So the show's on tonight, great, I'll go down and buy a ticket. Well, promoters don't like that.
No.
Promoters are not going to base their financial future on whether, Joey B comes down and buys a ticket that night. They want the ticket bought in advance. So when, you've got a 400 capacity hall and 100 tickets are sold, the promoter will go, nope, cutting my losses, we cancel the show.
Hmm.
And then it turns into a vicious circle because the more they cancel shows, the more people won't buy tickets.
Yeah.
So there has to be a meeting of the minds here between the promoters and the punters where it's like, please, let's try and sort this out because the end of the day, the ones who are getting hurt are the punters and the bands.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
The promoters usually have deep pockets, and they'll just cut it short and lose a little bit of money rather than going the whole way. So it's a problem. But it's just the world we have to deal with, since we all got screwed over so nicely. But don't get me started.
Oh, I know. I know that's a good. It's that's why I ask you. Someone who's been around. Your school, you get it. Plus, you've got a lot of. You're loaded with common sense too. About things that are perceived as social or political commentary or what have you, in the COVID thing. And I've talked to a lot of musicians.
Yeah, I mean, there's things like that they get treated politically when then they're not really political. In the sense of, I'm the red team and you're the blue team, da 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 da. A lot of this stuff verges more into good versus evil.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Great perspective. That's it.
And it's happening here. And I despair of what's happening in the UK. And it's certainly happening where you are.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's disturbing, but I think there's hopefully some light at the end of the tunnel, where people are just saying enough is enough, and we need to kick back against this.
Well, Trump's got to get in, mate. That's the issue there, is because America sets the tone, and if Trump doesn't get in, I don't care about political alliances at this point in time. You talk about good and evil. The authoritarians have taken over the left. We've seen it with George Soros, and we saw it with Anthony Fauci and the World Health Organization. They're all aligned with these fucking nutcases. And if Kamala gets in, mate, we're in.
It's astonishing. It's astonishing over, say, 20, 30 years, the positions over here of the left and right, 180.
Yes. Yeah, 100%.
The Republicans were the warmongers and the neocons. Now it's the opposite.
Yeah.
The Democrats were the social and helping people out that were hurting and all. Completely flipped. But they tried to keep the same script. But anyone with half a brain can try to watch this stuff dispassionately and see that when someone's trying to marginalize a guy like Elon Musk, it's like, come on.
Yeah.
Nuts. The guy is Tony Stark in real life.
Mm-hmm.
It's a crazy world we live in. And like the great meme I saw was the girl on the phone going, can't come there tonight. I'm watching the season finale of the United States.
Yeah, I know. We might as well have humor in our demise, or through the demise. Yeah, it's a shame. And we've seen the death and the end of American excellence, which I didn't think we'd see in our lifetimes, but we're here, and it's a very, very shrewd observation that you've made there about the polar magnetic north and south shifting like that they have, and the way that the script is.
Yeah, and it's obviously plays into that whole thing of the uni party. No matter where you are, it's almost like wrestling. Who's going to be the bad guy this year? Oh, you're the bad guy, okay? And there's obviously more to it, and it just appears that some shadowy group of people have decided that 3/4 of the world's population needs to go bye-bye.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is, like, things like that, you could come out with them, say 15, 20 years ago, and people would look at you and think you're clinically insane. And so many of these absolutely out there conspiracy theories have been proven to be absolutely true over and over and over again. So when you hear outlandish stuff, you always take it with a pinch of salt and go, that sounds nuts, but maybe.
Yeah. Well, we absolutely saw that with the Wuhan lab theory. We've seen that with the vaccine wasn't safe and effective. We know that now.
And so much is coming out on that I think I don't even know where the bottom is on this. It's some of the stories are really horrifying about it, and it's opened up the whole discussion about the medical profession in general.
Yeah,
like do no harm, the Hippocratic oath, the hypocritical oath, more like.
they've got ever since Big Pharma became Big Pharma. Whenever that happened, I suppose that happened in post World War II. I mean, it's probably even before yours and my lifetime, really, when these things started to manifest. We're just seeing the
interesting thing I heard about that was John D. Rockefeller, who was one of the richest men in history. He basically instigated the whole pharmaceutical industry, because when they started finding out they could do stuff with petroleum, he basically started a whole movement of discrediting homeopathic and old school remedies to try and sell the kind of stuff they were manufacturing. And that whole thing went into, this is all quackery. You need to take on new drugs. And then changing the whole education system, the same guy, because it's just like, why are you teaching this? These people don't need to know that in order to be good workers. We only need to teach them what they need to know. They need to know by rote. We don't want to teach them critical thinking. They want to turn out worker drones. So, a lot of stuff like that's went on over history, and it's horrifying. It really is.
Yeah.
And again, a large portion of the people are deaf, dumb, and blind to this, and freak out if anyone questions their worldview, which is sad.
Yeah. It must be a musician thing, because all of the conversations I'm having resemble the one we're having now, meaning that we're wide awake and we have an awareness. Some of the fans are a bit stupid, but you get that. They got two heads. But the musicians themselves, like people like you and some of the people, Ian, I think, in Steve's band, British Lion, these conversations, you'd love that guy, mate. I mean, these conversations are interchangeable. In other words, so many of us see what's going on, yet change is so slow to be effective. And
yeah, I think a lot of it, it could just be, travel. The old sage about travel broadens the mind. You get to look at things maybe a little differently and question, question authority. That old saying, that's, holds true. It really does. Don't believe what you're told. There's always, like watching the TV these days, that you'll see stuff that's blatantly propaganda and other stuff that's a lot more subtle. And you have to take it with a grain of salt and maybe do some research. But even then, it's very hard to discern what's really going on in cases. So it's strange times,
Yeah, sorry, it's Graham from British Lion and Steve Harris's band. There you go. I said Ian, but yeah, well, mate, yeah, well, I'm so grateful to hear that a band that I do love, being Raven, that you being at the head of that, you're loaded with common sense. And look, I understand that that there's to talk about these things can potentially alienate part of your fan base, and I know that's your business, and I so I can appreciate that, but I also think it's important to tell the truth about these things, and you've certainly done that. And you've had a conversation about it, and I think fans have just got to wake up to themselves a little bit about the fact that musicians are allowed to have an opinion, and this isn't just an opinion. We're allowed to talk about the truth, because I'm doing a theological master's, you see, so I still believe in the absolute version of truth, not the postmodern version of truth. Okay, I'm still Christian, and I still have that outlook on things, and people have got to be aware that if we move away from Christianity, if we move away from what made our civilization so great, a shared Greco-Roman and Judeo-Christian heritage, all of these things as grand visions that then manifested in Western civilization. If you move away from them, have a look at every other civilization in history and tell me where they're at. They all died. Every single one of them is I mean, have a look at these Islamic civilizations, if you like, and the type of death and destruction and
absolutely,
that happens
absolutely.
there.
I mean, you don't even have to be particularly religious to look at the tenets and say that, well, you know, love thy neighbor, do not kill, do not. I mean, it's fundamental.
Yeah.
When people are messing with that, you're in deep doo-doo, baby. Big
You're
time.
right, mate. You're right. And that's what they're doing, though. They want to, this is, you talk about Rockefeller and getting a hold of the educational institutions, this long march through the institutions, which is
100%. Yeah, that's the thing people don't understand with that. I mean, I got kind of red pilled on this stuff years ago with a book about the Kennedy assassination. That's how I fell into all this stuff. And then there was a book called, I believe, Too Secret, Too Long, which was about the MI5 and MI6 spies in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And, they very clearly mention about the Russians with the long march through the institutions, how they play the long game. It could take generations. But, and you see that with people trying to destroy the Western world. You see that. And it's scary. And you see politicians just barefaced lying to the point where you never saw lies like that before. And it's just like, really?
Yeah.
And, it's like, I said it, it must be true. And people just fall in line. It's just beyond me.
Do you think this is, from an eschatological perspective, so meaning focusing on what happens in the hereafter, do you feel as though this realm, this world that we live in, is some kind of a battleground between good and evil, and we're merely the chess pieces, that the players, wherever they might be in the ether or what have you, we're just the means for which they make a move to try to win the overall game?
I think we're definitely like in most cases non-player characters, and the actual players are kind of several steps removed, and whatever happens to us is just collateral damage, and it just seems strange. You must think that some of these people that want to do this damage, they have a deep, almost like a theological way of looking at things. They honestly believe that, it's for the good of humanity or what have you, Yeah. They think they're doing the right thing. And as opposed to the Bond villain version of being evil, I think that they've just totally got it wrong. But it's hard not to think of that when you see somebody like that character from the World Economic Fund dressed up in his suit, and he looks like Blofeld.
Klaus Schwab is just evil. That's like he's the.
And they're not shy about their agenda. They're not shy at all. And when people tell you who they are, believe them. That's what I found. If they come right out and say what they're going to do. So
have you ever experienced ayahuasca before?
No. It sounds incredibly interesting. I've read a lot of stuff about it and saw a lot of the Joe Rogan stuff about it and what have you, where it seems to be a means of breaching into different dimensions, as opposed to like,
I attend the
instead of, hey, we're on drugs. And there was I read about a treatment where they were putting people on a slow drip, so they were able to experience this over like hours as opposed to minutes.
Yeah, that'd be dangerous. See,
and then they'll tell them, make drawings, describe what you've seen, and people describe the exact same things.
I know.
As if they're like they visited a city and were drawing the city. It's fascinating.
I attend circles. You see, that's how I stopped drinking alcohol.
Yeah,
So I've done it and I've been there, and I can tell you, there's that the way I look at it these days is this: where we are is abnormal. That's the normal bit. Does that make sense? Like, having been in there, because there's truth, love. Your spirit resides in this space here, and it's a reconnecting with your spirit self, and who you are. That's why people stop drinking and stop taking illicit substances, because all of that stuff is a mask to deeper hurt and deeper pain. And there's active warfare. I can see there's active warfare going on against, like there is with cannabis too, but very much so against ayahuasca. There's these people saying, "Oh, don't do ayahuasca; it's full of evil demons." All this stuff. It does mirror what goes on in here, because that's I'm not. I've done 4 or 5 circles, so I haven't been too deep, but I've been deep enough to understand what I am in relation to it. But
It from what I've read and seen. I mean, these experiences fundamentally change people.
Yeah, for the good.
Like,
too.
In a very, very deep way.
Yeah, it strengthened my faith. I mean, this is the point. This is what they don't want. This is why I talk about it on the show. They don't want people to hear things like that, because if they hear that people become more in tune with their Christianity or their faith or what have you, doing something which has been demonized like by ayahuasca. I mean, that single thing alone, if I could tell everybody, just do it at least once, be brave, do it at least once, your whole life, your whole perspective, everything shifts, because you move spectrums, you shift spectrums, you go into a different plane of existence in this realm here. And all of a sudden you're energized to take your own life by the bull by the horns. Imagine you're no longer a non-player character in your own life. You take a hold of your very existence. And to your point, I see all these people numbing. Hey, fuck, I did it. Numb myself with alcohol. A lot of people do it with drugs and alcohol. But you don't, once you go through this process of reconnecting with your soul, your spirit self, and your spirit guide takes you on that journey, you don't do it. And in that way and through that method, we can fight these evil sons of bitches. Okay, we can actually do it. Regular people do it.
You mentioned I mean, Mark and I were talking a while back, and it's just like everyone of our age, they're all on drugs. All of them, they're all on drugs. Everyone you know, they're all on freaking, mood alterers or some sort of,
pharmaceutical
stimulant or a depressant. They're all on drugs. It's insane. And I'm depressed, so I'm on this one, and this one helps me to get to sleep, and this one helps me to wake up, and this one, it's like, and I've heard horror stories of people that were, you're on one, you have to take 2 more to counteract the side effects of the first one, and then they create further side effects, and before you know it, you're a zombie.
Yeah.
And it's 180 degrees away from what you're saying. This is dumbing down and destroying the human spirit, as opposed to revealing and opening it up and taking it somewhere else.
Yeah, there's definitely some sort of warfare happening in this realm for us and our consciousness. Our consciousness seems to be very valuable to demons. I don't know why. I'm not pretending I understand, but I have seen and felt that aspect of it whilst I've been on they call it journeying, when you're in the circle, and you do. And I have had a demon interact with me, and you can make them disappear. There's a method that I won't go into where you can make them disappear, but they do try to go after you in there. But there's the higher source. There's ayahuasca being the mother, or the high priestess, I call her. She sits above all, if you like, and you've got this umbilical cord to her through this DMT reality, through this realm where actual truth resides. So you will find good and evil in there, but if you choose to see the good, you will see only the good and the reconnection with the self. And the demons that are winning, the Klaus Schwab, he's clearly a manifestation or clearly an avatar for a fucking demon. Same thing with Anthony Fauci, same thing with Kamala Harris. These people are clearly fucking captured. It's plain as day to someone like me who's, I'm not saying I'm that experienced. I'm not like Jimmy with regards to LSD, if you know what I'm saying. I'm not, that experienced. But I've done it enough to when I look at somebody who's up on a pedestal like that, as hopelessly inarticulate as Kamala is, I'm going, you're a fucking mouthpiece for some evil shit.
And it's hard to look at some of these people and and not think that that is what's behind it all. When you hear about the sex trafficking and the human sacrifice and all this stuff, I mean that by very definition is demonic. I mean, it's the worst of the worst.
Mm. And
So
the reason
to even have that happening in society is freaking dreadful, awful.
Yeah. Oh, the child trafficking thing is it's probably the most pertinent thing we need to get on top of in our time, beyond fixing an economy or what have you, because when you go back in history, every single society, we've talked about societies that exist outside the Western Hemisphere being chaos, but civilizations are destroyed. The ones who sacrifice children, like what you're seeing through these abortion laws. And I'm pro-choice, but I'm simply saying you still have to make a choice. And the law can still be there to allow you to do something, but it's whether or not you choose to do it or not. And that's my point. Okay. Any society that sacrifices children is doomed to fail. That is a historical fact. Every single one, from those white South American civilizations to the fucking psychotic Canaanites, they're all gone. The only societies and civilizations that thrive are those that prioritize their health, welfare, and well-being of children in every single instance. Okay, so you can change the laws as much as you want, but people have to do the right thing. They've still got to stick to their moral, to that compass which sticks to a true north, not their personal truth, which is that I just want to do this now because it works for me now.
Yep.
Yeah,
there's a lot of people that doing the right thing is too hard a choice. It's just easier to go along.
Yeah,
and that's how we end up where we are now, with people just going along. I mean, and there's wheels within wheels. I mean, the things that are going on in the UK right now, you look from an outside perspective, and it's just like, are they just trying to goad these people into a civil war so they can then step in and institute martial law, 15-minute cities, central credit, digital banking, curfews, whatever, I mean, I it's very hard to look at these things and not come to that kind of conclusion. But, all I can say is it makes great fodder for song lyrics.
If nothing else. Yeah. They always look on the bright side of life in terms of what you can do with this stuff, and you're not wrong. It's I just hope we get out of it, and in between, to your point, there's good inspiration there for you to come up with some very insightful content.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, it's been magnificent talking to you. You're a gentleman. Thank you so much for giving me your time like this too. I'll ask as a courtesy, if you're cool with everything we talked about, I'd love to release it, but I'll...
Yeah, man, no problem. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I'll see you down here, mate. I'll be on the side of the stage at the back room, mate. You'll see me waving to you.
Brilliant. Come up and say hi. Please do.
Yeah, I might do that, actually. So after this chat, I think it'd be good, mate, just to shake your hand, and mate, we'll have a soda water together then.
There you go. We can do that. All right,
Thanks,
man.
Thank you, brother.
I'm off to pack, and I'll see you in a few days.
Yeah, for sure, mate. Talk to you then.
Have a good one.
Rightio. I hope you enjoyed that conversation there. It is very important to discuss matters that are deemed important and pertinent, such as the rising creep of authoritarianism and the way that we might find a way out. I want to thank John for going there and for being willing to share his thoughts. Look, if you love that conversation, there are many more like it over at scarsandguitars.com. I'm having a few problems with YouTube, though, these days, so God knows what the future is like with regards to my future with the show on YouTube, but I may have to put all new episodes on Rumble. Unfortunately, that's just the way it's trending. I just got a message through today saying that a conversation with Craig LaCicero, which has been posted for years, now contravenes their so-called bullshit community guidelines. It's lies. It's not even... They reckon that he and I, and he's a lefty, by the way, completely different to John and so many others, so many other guests. He's the one left-wing guest, him and Kelly from Atheist, where I've talked politics. And there's no way he'd be saying anything inflammatory in the way that YouTube would define it. But they've pulled the episode and given me a 2-week community strike. It's bullshit. You know, this episode should have been up weeks ago, but you're hearing it on YouTube. That is, all of you podcast people are hearing it in the moment. But for all of you people on YouTube, it's taken me a couple of weeks to be able to even post it. So what do you think? If you're still listening, hit me up. Will you follow me to Rumble? Because I think that's where I've got to go. Do you give a shit? Is this show just one of many, many venues? Many, just another fucking more stream of content that you listen to or consume and you don't really care about? I know many of you do. And I'd love it for you to follow me to an independent venue, but just about everybody is on YouTube. All of the fans and listeners are on YouTube. There's not even a fraction of the audience. It's less than 1% of the audience is on Rumble. But what do? I've got to do something. All right, that's it from me. Always look on the bright side of life. Yes. Anyway, always got the conversations. They're never going to stop. It's just the venue's going to change. That's all, I think. So my name's Andrew Mackay-Smith after all of that, and I host the show Scars and Guitars. I do appreciate that you listen to the show and you've listened right up to this point. Until the next one, it's a very goodbye for now.